Good afternoon and welcome to the newest public affairs program of the Department of Education Region 3, where we tackle different legal issues concerning our teachers, our learners, and our employees with the expert advice of our Regional Legal Officer, Attorney Angeline P. Rohel. Good afternoon, Attorney.
Good afternoon, Ma'am Michelle. Good afternoon to our viewers.
Welcome to our newest show, Legal Matters.
Thank you, Ma'am. Thank you for inviting me here.
Okay, so for our maiden episode for this month of May, we're going to discuss with Attorney Angeline one of the most important and timely things that our teachers should remember or live by in everyday life. So this is the code of ethics for our professional teachers. Okay, so Attorney, let's put everything in the right perspective by defining who a teacher is, meaning to say who is covered by this code of ethics.
Okay, ma'am. So first and foremost, to define a teacher po, looking at the code of ethics of teachers, a teacher is defined as someone who is licensed to practice the teaching profession. And a teacher is also someone that is competent and is able to actually impart proper knowledge to students and learners. But aside from that, of course, if we will look at another side of the definition of being a teacher, I've spoken to a lot of teachers before, and I used to ask them, for you, what is a teacher? So they always tell me, to be a teacher is not really a profession. It is a vocation.
Yes.
Because in teaching, let's admit it, we do not earn really much. No?
Much, yes.
It's not something that will make you earn six digits,
yes,
something like that. But to those teachers that I've spoken before, to them, it's a profession. It is not a profession, but it is a vocation. It's their calling, meaning it's a calling to mold the minds of their young students and to influence their lives in a positive way.
And as we always say, teaching is the most noble profession, and it gives birth to other professions.
Correct,
like, we
ma'am.
produce engineers, doctors, attorneys like you. Without teachers, we don't have other professions. But are also teachers who did not yet pass the PRC exam, licensure exam for teachers, also covered by the Code of Ethics, Attorney?
Actually, it covers those licensed professionals under our laws. And aside from those teaching in the public schools, in elementary schools and high schools, it also covers those who are teaching vocational subjects. And of course, also those college instructors, since they're within the definition of a teacher.
A teacher, okay. So before we go into the specifics of this code of ethics, well, there's this question that is ethics different from what we call moral? So how do we define or how do we differentiate if they are different really from one another, ethics and morals?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, they're really different because when we speak of ethics, it refers to the code of conduct that governs a profession. So, for example, if you're a teacher, you have your code of ethics for professional teachers. If you're a lawyer, you have the code of ethics for lawyers. So, it depends po in every profession. So,
like journalists, we also have our code of ethics.
Yes. So, it covers the code of conduct that you should possess if you are a part of a profession. On the other hand, morals, it's more of something that's in you. So, it's the values that you believe, the values that you instill in yourself. So, that's entirely different po.
And usually morals are relative to a specific religion,
Yes,
or whatever you believe in, right?
It varies from one person to another.
This code of ethics for professional teachers is really additional to the code of conduct that we have for government employees. So talagang masasabi natin na teachers are really, they have a lot of things to remember whenever they in their practice of profession or even in their everyday routinary activities. So, our teachers may ask, for those who are not yet aware, of course, everything has a basis. So, what is the legal basis for our code of ethics for professional teachers?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, for the Code of Ethics for Teachers, we have Republic Act number 7836 or the Philippine Teachers Professionalization Act of 1994.
1994.
And aside from that, we have Presidential Decree number 223, which creates the Professional Regulation Commission.
Mhm.
So through that PD and through that Republic Act, the Board for Professional Teachers was created. And this Board for Professional Teachers is actually in charge of enhancement of teaching profession and promulgating laws, rules that will govern the practice of profession in the country.
Okay. So under this law or this code of ethics, do we have certain requirements that for one to be regarded as a professional teacher?
Yes, ma'am, aside from passing the licensure exam, of course, if we will look at our code of ethics, it also mandates that a teacher should be physically, mentally, and morally fit
Fit,
to
yes.
become a part of the profession po.
So what are the standards given? Like, do we have to undergo certain tests before to determine this eligibility for a teacher?
For physical fitness, yes, we have the, I think, physical exams that we undergo. For the mental fitness, meron din pong test dyan. But
Mga
for,
psychological
yes,
tests that we
psychological
undergo.
tests.
Mhm.
But for, what's this called? The physical, mental, moral fitness. When we refer to moral fitness, that is one that is governed by our code of ethics.
Yeah, so yun yung magiging basis natin to check whether a teacher is morally fit to work as a teacher or
Yes.
not. Okay. But attorney, before we go into a break, siguro let's leave it hanging, no, for our viewers so that they will stay tuned and watch out. What is the most important thing that a teacher must remember, or the requirement that a teacher should really remember being a teacher?
Well, to become a teacher, of course, like other professionals po, we are bound to follow our code of ethics. We are expected to conduct ourselves in a manner that is beyond reproach.
Mhm.
And we must always remember that as professionals, we should embody the things mandated under our code of ethics. And of course, we should serve as a model to our learners also.
Yes, let's leave it hanging there, serving as a model. We'll go into that right after this break.
Bidakin! Ikaw at ako ang bidakin. Sa COVID di padadaig. Sa ligtas na pagbabalik. Sama-sama maging bidakin. Sa bahay, bidakin. Kumain ng masustansya. Uminom ng vitamina. Kung pakiramdam ay hindi maganda, sabihin sa magulang at sa bahay muna. Sa kalye, bidakin! Best friend natin ang mask. Suotin kahit saan. Ingatan ang kamay, maghugas pag galing sa labas. Sa school, bidakin! Sa pila, wag dikit-dikit. Dumistansya para iwas sakit. Laging open ang window para maganda ang airflow. 3Bs, tandaan. Bakuna, bayanihan, bidakin. Halina't magtulungan. Ikaw at ako ang bidakin. Sa COVID di padadaig. Sa ligtas na pagbabalik. Sama-sama maging bidakin.
And we're back to legal matters, and we left at the point where Attorney Angeline said teachers should be role models. As we say, teachers, we put them on a high pedestal and we really look up to them because, teachers are really role models. And so, let's ask Attorney if we have something in the code of ethics for our professional teachers about, being a role model to
Yes.
everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have Section 3 of the Code of Ethics for Teachers, which states that a teacher shall maintain a dignified personality at all times. And, of course, that dignified personality would mean that the teacher should be a model and worthy of emulation among their learners.
That's the biggest word there, worthy of emulation. So, it really encompasses generally all aspects of a life of a personality or a person, meaning to say morally, probably siguro physically din, di ba? But are there certain activities that are prohibited when we say related to having a dignified personality of a teacher?
Actually, we do not have a hard and fast rule as to what constitutes a dignified personality. But I believe that it is something that we already know as individuals. Kasi most of the time po, what happens is that since nadadala tayo sa mga nakikita natin sa iba, sometimes we forget that we are professionals and that we should act like one.
So we are influenced by other
Yes.
people, no?
Opo.
But attorney, in our code of ethics, like related to being worthy of emulation, especially by the learners, do we have prohibited acts? Like we know for a fact that all government employees are prohibited in going to casinos, gambling,
Yes.
drinking, probably. So what are these talagang naka-mention po ng mga
Yes.
prohibited acts of a teacher?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, under the Code of Ethics, it states that a teacher shall behave with honor and dignity at all times. And as much as possible, he should refrain from acts like gambling, smoking, drunkenness, and other excesses, or let's say immoral and disgraceful conduct, immoral relationships.
Immoral, illicit relations. So probably, attorney, I'm reading one of your references in terms of illicit relations. No, can you cite one particular case wherein a teacher got punished or dismissed from the service because of having illicit relations?
Yes, ma'am. There are a lot of cases involving that, ma'am. I will no longer specify the title of the case, but the usual scenario is this, that there is a teacher, a male teacher, and then a female teacher. They enter into an affair. Both of them are married. They both have their partners. They are married. They have their children. But in school, they appear as someone in a relationship. A couple. Yes. So, there are instances po na ganun na eventually natatanggal sila sa serbisyo kasi we should accept that having immoral relationships, specifically those involving married individuals, this is not allowed under our Code of Ethics and under our civil service law and rules.
And it does not take for both parties to be married. At least one of them is married.
Yes.
And there's a petitioner who complains that, you know, my partner or my spouse is having an affair with a teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
Or even the teacher himself or herself having an affair. So pwedeng it can be a ground for dismissal from the service. So so we know that we receive such complaints, being in the public assistance complaint, working together, no, with the legal unit and the public affairs. So, but these are the common complaints that we receive. But we also receive such complaints with our teachers having financial problems. So, do we also have a certain provision in our Code of Ethics that say teacher should be, you know, having a good financial standing?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I agree, no, that there are really a lot of cases filed with Region 3 involving personal matters, financial matters of a teacher. As much as possible, we do not want to delve with their private
Personal
matters.
affairs, yes.
Yes. Especially if it's money or personal relationships. But when it comes to a point that the indebtedness already interferes with your work, it already exposes the name of your school, it exposes your profession as a teacher, then it comes to a point po that somehow it becomes improper. So actually, our Code of Ethics states that a teacher should maintain good reputation, and that is with respect to financial matters. And as much as possible, he or she must strive to settle his or her loan obligations. And also, under DepEd Order number 49 series of 2006 po, we have willful failure to pay just debts.
Yes, debts, yes.
So, if we know that we have this debt, we acknowledge that in an instrument, we have a promissory note covering that debt, then it's much better for you to settle that, because that's willful non-payment of debt.
Because it really would affect the reputation of the teacher. Say, imagine a teacher teaching inside the classroom, and then here comes a lending institution, asking for your payment while you are having a class. So it really, once it interferes with your duties and functions as a teacher, that's where the code of ethics really comes in. And of course, we would like to remind all our teachers to really, one of the code of conduct nga for government employees is simple living. So siguro,
Yes.
we really have to also stress that so that our teachers will not fall into that pit of having piles of debt, or yung minsan nga wala na silang sweldo, di ba? Or yung ATM nila, they do not
Sinasangla.
have them. Yes. So, kasi nandun na sa PLI. So, we have to really remind, and siguro we have to make an advocacy for our teachers. But of course, we know that sometimes we cannot really avoid having those kinds of problems. But if we can avoid, that's better for a teacher kasi it's really provided in our code of ethics. But of course, just like any employee in a company, in an organization, a teacher has co-workers, colleagues, and superiors that he or she will relate with. So, attorney, how does a teacher should, having a good relations with your co-workers? Is that also one of the expected behavior of a teacher?
Yes, ma'am. Under our Code of Ethics po in Section 7, it states that every teacher shall maintain harmonious and pleasant relationship and personal relations with his or her own colleagues, her co-workers, co-teachers, and it must be something that you practice po talaga. Kasi most of the time, the problem po is yung mga personal problems natin with our colleagues. We bring them to the school.
Yes.
Kung meron man tayong problema sa kanila outside of work, as much as possible, we try to set that
Settle.
aside.
Yes.
So, yun po, dapat reminded po tayo doon na dapat meron tayong harmonious relationship with our colleagues in the DepEd.
Okay, whether teacher or not,
Yes,
that is
opo.
also one of the important things. So when we go back, we will still discuss more of the prohibited acts that the teacher should remember after we go back. Legal matters.
Kahit nasa trabaho si nanay at si tatay, hindi ako nalulungkot. Hindi rin ako nagugutom kasi kasama kita, Lola. Bago umalis si nanay para magtrabaho, nagiiwan muna siya ng breast milk niya para maibigay mo sa akin, Lola, pag nagutom ako. Pati pagkain may nakahanda na rin. Minsan nga ikaw rin po ang nagluluto para sa akin. At syempre, naglalaro rin tayo. Lola, bukas po ulit ha. Tay, hindi ka nawawalan ng ginagawa? Naglilinis ng bahay, naghahanda ng agahan, at kung ano-ano pa. Pag nagbe-breastfeed ako kay nanay, ginagawa mo lahat para tulungan kami. Nakikita ko nga si nanay na laging nakangiti at masaya. Idol kita, tatay! Sa araw, kahit anong oras ako magutom, umaga, tanghali, nandyan ka lagi, Nay. Kung ano ang kailangan kong kainin, inihahanda mo. Kapag gabi na at akala ko'y tulog ka na, konting iyak ko lang, gising agad. Napakasarap sa pakiramdam ng yakap mo. Idol kita, Nanay.
And we are back to Legal Matters. We're still here with our Regional Legal Officer, Attorney Angeline Pirohel. So, Attorney, kanina we discussed about how a teacher should behave. No? Now, we also know for a fact that as government officials or employees, we are not allowed to accept gifts or favors. So, more so with the teachers kasi they have this, parang they cannot change the grades or something of a learner just because they accepted something. So pasok din po ba yun sa Code of Ethics?
Yes po. Actually, ma'am, I get a lot of questions about gift giving sa mga eskwelahan whenever I conduct talks, discussions about Code of Ethics. But there are two laws that I always bring up. And these are Republic Act number 3019 or the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act and RA 6713, our
yes,
Code of Conduct. So, sabi ko, whenever a teacher asks me, attorney, pwede ba kaming tumanggap ng regalo? Teacher's Day naman. Diba?
I was about to ask that, special occasions like Teacher's Day.
Opo, special occasions. Well,
Or
our
birthday of a teacher to show just appreciation.
Opo. Actually, ang guideline po dyan is whenever we accept gifts, such gift must be of nominal and insignificant value. Meaning it is something that will not really influence your decision making, your reputation, your integrity as a teacher. So what is nominal and significant will always be or will always be compared as to your salary. So, ano ba yung salary natin? So siguro kung ano yung amount na hindi naman nakatataas doon, hindi ganoon kalaki, masasabi po natin na insignificant value pa yun. Pero, of course, ibang usapan kung, for example, iPhone ang bibigay sa'yo ng parent na
laptop
na very supportive sa kanyang anak. I'm not saying na may ganito, pero in case lang na, for example, bibigyan ka na ng laptop, sasabihin na, Sir, ako nang bahala sa laptop mo. Siyempre, that is something that is significant in value na. So, ang guideline po natin dyan, if we will accept man, in the event na mag-accept man tayo, just make sure that there is an occasion. For example, a Christmas, national festivities, Christmas, New Year,
or your birthday,
yes. What else? Teacher's Day, very common po yan. And make sure that it is not something of great value po.
And besides, if they're giving it to you, wala dapat kapalit.
Yes, and without the intention of asking something from you. Kasi there is the thin line po between gift and bribe.
Yes.
So, when we cross that line na alam naman natin na
sinusuhulan ka na.
Sinusuhulan na ako nito. Ay, meron akong estudyante na anak nito and in fact, this student is vying for honors.
Yes.
So, dun na po natin i-draw yung line. So, versus gift and bribe.
So that's very clear if we can accept gifts of, insignificant values. And of course, if Teacher's Day, we have a reason to really, show our appreciation to our teachers. So, attorney, how about those teachers being complained na they have relationship with their students? What is our take on that?
Yes, ma'am. Well, if we will look at our Code of Ethics po, this provision is very crucial because it states that a teacher shall exercise utmost professional discretion to avoid scandal, gossip, and preferential treatment of the learner. So, if we will read the provision, there's really no express prohibition na sinasabi na, student-teacher relationship is prohibited. Hindi yan pwede. So, what I'm seeing po from this provision is, we cannot avoid instances where a relationship will bloom between a teacher and a student. But the guideline here is, we should exercise utmost professional discretion to avoid scandal. Avoid scandal and preferential treatment, of course, of the learner. Especially, meron pong case kasi na ganito naman na teacher siya and then student niya and then eventually naging sila. Pero sa school nila, there was no scandal, there was no issue. Actually, hindi mo mapapansin na sila talaga. So, in fairness to the teacher, she exercised utmost professional discretion. So, as long as it is not scandalous, you do not publicly display your affection with your student, we can say that you will not be held liable under Section 7.
And teachers siguro, especially in the secondary level, they must always remember that, our students are still minors.
Yes.
So, talaga kailangan din
for
talaga.
that, yes, pag minors.
So, I read in one of your references that there's this case na 30-year-old and 16-year-old. But the Supreme Court ruled in their favor, di ba?
Yes po, that's what I'm saying kanina. Actually, it's one of the rare instances that the Supreme Court became poetic somehow.
Actually, the truism that I posted.
Sabi is, the heart has reasons of its own, which reason it does not know. So, parang, whenever I mention that to teachers sa mga discussions, parang, uy, parang sweet naman, no?
Kinikilig, no?
Sila, tapos pinipicturean nila. Kasi it's true.
Yes.
Teachers are also human beings,
yes.
and we have all the right to love, to live, no? But of course, in loving and in living, we should take into consideration our profession all the time.
Okay.
Yung view nila sa atin, how we could avoid scandals, issues of impropriety.
Okay. So, babalik lang din po tayo dun sa first natin diniscuss na we always have to remember that, once you go into a relationship with anyone married, no, whether it is your student or co-teacher, just always remember na kung single pa siya, and then always remember na dapat discreet na lang, especially if you belong to the same school.
Yes.
Okay. Now, attorney, I would like to kasi although this issue is not really but nung mga panahon siguro ng mga lola natin, our parents, no, they have this feeling na talagang they're really afraid of their teacher kasi pwede pa nun yung pamamalo using the ruler or
Yes.
whatever na instrument na ginagamit. No? But now, meron na rin konting repercussion to with how our teachers are able to discipline our students, but they are not allowed, no, for corporal punishments to their students.
Yes po.
This is part of our code of ethics.
Yes, ma'am. It's barred under our code of ethics. Corporal punishment. Very important po for us to remember. Kasi aside from the code of ethics, we also have DepEd Order number 40, series of 2012.
Child protection policy.
Yes, which is the DepEd Child Protection Policy. And under the DepEd Child Protection Policy, corporal punishment po acts like slapping the child, ibibilad mo siya sa araw, paparusahan mo, ipapag-squat mo, sasabunutan mo, kukurutin. Most importantly, yung slapping the face of a student because it's a no-contact zone under our DepEd order. So, corporal punishment po, acts that are intended to punish a student because this student did not submit his homework, or this student
or
arrived
unruly
late,
behavior inside the classroom.
That is not allowed. It's because the DepEd order itself emphasizes that there should be no violence and abuse against children, and that there should be no contact between the teacher and the student.
Talagang maximum tolerance.
Maximum tolerance po talaga. Zero tolerance policy
And actually,
po.
we have one of we call positive discipline. Diba?
Yes,
related
opo.
to the child protection policy.
Yes, so yun po, ang laging tinatanong, paano naman namin didisiplinahin yung estudyante namin kung hindi na pala pwedeng paluin? Because back in those days, no, nung siguro po nung tayo, pwedeng paluin sa kamay, pwedeng ipag-squat, pero ngayon hindi na. So, ang pwede lang po ngayon is positive discipline. So, what is that positive discipline? Of course, you talk to the student. Anong problema niya? Sabihin mo na mali yung ginagawa niya. So, everything that's positive, we can apply that.
Okay. So, talagang malinaw na malinaw po yan ngayon, no, na, teachers are really, actually, ang reklamo naman ngayon ng mga teachers, not really reklamo, but the dilemma of the teachers, kami naman ang kawawa. Kasi parang ngayon nag-iba na yung ng sitwasyon kasi nga, they are not really able to really discipline fully, our students.
I would like to add, ma'am, doon po sa sinasabi nila na kami yung kawawa kasi walang teacher protection policy. We must remember po that we are not in the same footing as children because we are full-grown adults and these children are minors, these students are younger than us. Therefore, they deserve more protection in law. Those who have less in life or less in age should have more in law.
So that's a very good clarification, no? Especially for our teachers who feel that, we don't have this protection against, these issues. But, attorney, one of the things that we also would like to remind, although tapos na yung election last May 9, one of the things that even us, government officials are not allowed to do is to engage in any political activity, campaigning, endorsing whoever political candidate. So, even our teachers, especially they serve as electoral boards, during the elections.
That became a hot topic during the last election kasi as we all know, this past election has been really kumbaga testing our character din kasi we saw a lot of people posting things that are out of bound na po, kumbaga hindi na dapat i-post, pero as teachers po, ano ba yung guide natin dito? So, we should remember we have a DepEd order prohibiting electioneering and partisan political activity. And also, our civil service rules require us that we should be politically neutral. We should be politically neutral and we should not engage in electioneering. So, malinaw na malinaw po yun na tayo bilang government employees, dapat neutral lang tayo at hindi natin pinapakita na pumapanig tayo sa ganitong side or we are endorsing one side versus the other or that we are preferring this candidate over another.
Well, I would just like to ask this. What if a certain government official, a teacher, who wishes to run for a public position or political position, ano pong magiging process nun? Take a leave of absence or totally resign from the post?
Yes. There is this provision po sa rules natin and sa laws din on election and in civil service that when you run for public office, you're automatically resigned from your public post.
So very clear po, no? For those who want to run for public positions, you should resign from your post. So if you're holding any item, permanent item, so kailangan pong we separate from the service. So and if you kung natalo ka or whatever, you wish to return to the service, we will apply again. Okay. So, hindi po siya parang leave of absence lang. No? That's very clear. And one of the important things also that, syempre, we as teachers, we also look out for the behavior of our co-teachers, colleagues, or even our superiors. No? Do we have a mechanism for our teachers to say, report any of their co-teachers having, meron silang ginagawang hindi maganda, for example?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have our provisions po in the Code of Ethics which states that if you want to seek correctives of behavior of your colleague, then you should do this only if you have incontrovertible evidence. And also, you do that in writing, and without violating the rights of the other party, of course, to explain his or
So,
herself.
may proper grievance mechanism po tayo when it comes to if you have any complaints against your
Yes,
teachers. No?
opo. Anonymous complaints are really discouraged kasi under our DepEd Order number 49, if you have a complaint against your colleague or your superior in the Department of Education, we must comply with sections 4 and 5. Yun po yung lagi nating gustong ulit-ulitin sa mga mahilig mag-file ng anonymous complaints na meron tayong form and content na sinusunod na dapat nandun yung pangalan ng complainant, yung taong kino-complain mo, and your position in
So,
the department.
We can say that when a complaint is filed anonymously, we can act on it, pero hindi siya magiging formal complaint.
Yes po.
We can always send it to the person being complained against, pero hindi siya magsa-stand as parang magkakakaso siya, ganun. Tama po ba yun,
Depende
Atty.?
po yun sa magiging investigation kasi there are instances po under our DepEd Order number 49, the disciplining authority has actually the discretion to conduct an investigation on the basis of an anonymous complaint. But the general rule po is always we follow the form and content na bawal ang anonymous. But in the event may anonymous man, it's up to the disciplining authority.
Siguro it depends also, attorney, on the gravity, of the offense na alleged
Yes.
complaint na nirereklamo ka, gano'n, no? Siguro gano'n. But attorney, we know that you mentioned a while ago that for the past elections, kulang na lang sabihin natin medyo parang toxic yung dating, no? Because of, social media has really played a lot of, played a big difference, no, in this year's elections. So, do we have anything in the Code of Ethics, like, do we need to update it, taking into consideration the new trends, like having your own Facebook pages, our teachers, TikTok, their TikTok accounts? Okay lang ba yung sumasayaw-sayaw po yung mga teachers natin? What's your take on this, attorney?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, even if our Code of Ethics po is actually general naman, kumbaga all-encompassing naman siya, it covers every conduct that we should possess or we should manifest. I agree, ma'am, that there is a need for a more specific
Provision.
guideline or provision concerning social media activities. Kasi, let's admit it po, social media, it came later on eh. Kasi ito pong Code of Ethics na to, matagal na. Pero yung mga social media po na yan, recently, naging talagang useful po sa atin. Especially that we are implementing blended learning. Gamit na gamit po talaga yung mga social media accounts and the internet, of course. So, I believe there is a need po to somehow include the provision governing the conduct of teachers in their social media accounts and in their online accounts. But, yes, ma'am, actually, we acknowledge that there is freedom of expression.
Yes,
No, hindi
yun
naman
nga
natin
yung
sinasabi
sasabihin ko,
na bakit gano'n pati conduct namin sa social media.
Ano naman namin
Pakialaman
yun? My
na.
wall, my page, my
Yes,
respect. Parang
opo.
ganun, no?
We recognize that. Pero we should also recognize that freedom of expression under our Constitution, it's not absolute. There are certain limitations to that freedom. Hindi naman po yan, porque may freedom of expression ka, you are free to do everything, to say everything you want. Kasi sometimes it damages your profession na. So, dun po pumapasok yung limitations.
Okay. So yun nga, no, as teachers or even as government employees in general, na once we become servants, public servants, we carry this inherent duty, no, to really preserve our credibility and our reputation, especially for those who parang mga clients natin and our teachers kasi mga learners yung kanilang mga clients, no. So for my final question, attorney, once a teacher, a professional teacher at that, is found guilty of any of the offenses that we have discussed a while ago, what are the consequences?
Yes, ma'am. Under the Code of Ethics po, the violation of the provisions may result to revocation of your license, dismissal from the service, suspension, and we should view this in relation to DepEd Order number 49, series of 2006, which governs the disciplinary cases in the DepEd. So, there, iba-iba rin po yung imposable penalties. So, it may range from dismissal from government service up to the lowest, which is reprimand. So, yun na po yung pinakamagaan.
Pero all of this, even if the reprimand, nare-record po yun sa ating
Yes,
215.
opo.
So,
Recorded po yun.
So, what is your final message for all our teachers watching right now?
Yes. So, ang message ko lang po talaga siguro is more of the proper observance of the Code of Ethics for professional teachers. We must always remember that as professionals, we are bound to follow this code of conduct and we should always conduct ourselves in a manner beyond reproach.
Okay, thank you very much. And once we wear that uniform of being a teacher, we carry that responsibility to be a good role model to our students. So that has been a very substantive discussion, and we hope that our viewers learned a lot from our legal officer, Attorney Angeline Rohel. And we will see her again next month for our episode of Legal Matters. Thank you for watching. Good afternoon.